Hello and welcome to the fourth video in my Part 4 Java MTA course. In this video we're going to go through the switch statements, and as always we're going to go through the key information as quickly as possible, and then I'm going to give you some questions to cement the information. So let's get started. So before we start, you need to know the if statement and how the if statement works. If you aren't able to or if you don't understand how the if statement works, you're going to find this switch statement a little bit more difficult, as it's the best thing to do is trying to map the if statement onto the switch statement. So in the if statement we have a condition. If the condition is true, we do the conditional code, otherwise we miss the code out. So that's a normal if statement. What a switch statement does is that you insert a variable in the switch statement, and then you make different potential cases for that variable. So you're saying if that variable is equal to this case, do this code. If the variable is equal to this case, do this code. Otherwise, do the default code. So let's have a look at how that would be in Java. So we have this code here. If we look here, we have the scanner object getting some information from the user, and let's just pretend it's going to be a name, and then we put that variable into that switch statement. So we're inserting that variable in there, and then we're saying in the case of that variable equaling Bill, so the first one, the switch keyword allows you to enter a variable in there, so it's not a condition. The case allows you to compare the variable with the value inserted, so it will say if name equals Bill, print out hello Bill. If case equals Fred, or if name equals Fred, print hello Fred. Do bear in mind that in the case conditional code, so in each case, you need to have the break keyword to end the switch. So we actually insert the break to end that switch. And the last one, the default keyword, is a bit like the else statement. So it's saying if it doesn't match any of the cases, then we're going to print out the default or execute the default code. And in our case, that is the hello new user. So they're the key pieces of information. You have the switch keyword that allows you to enter a variable. We then use the case keyword with a value, and that is basically having the same condition as that name is equal to that value. In each of the cases we must have a break, and then typically at the end of a switch statement we have a default section, and this is just like an else statement, as it allows you to execute the code if that variable doesn't match any other case. Before we go on to the questions, let's just have a quick compare between an if statement and a switch statement. So the keywords, you have to know the difference. So with the keywords for the if statement, you have is, elif, or else if, and else. With the switch statement, you need to know switch, case, break, and default. You need to know what each of these do. Testing the expression, so in the if statement we can test multiple conditions. In the if statement we test multiple conditions, and we might have it with one condition having multiple conditions, or having multiple conditions within our if statement. In the switch statement we test on a single value, and we're just comparing that value with different cases of it. So just like in the previous example. Where do we use this? So an if statement, if you're evaluating complex conditions, and based on those conditions, whether we run some code, that is the if statement. The switch statement, if you want to test many values of the same data type. So for example, if you have a menu system and they have to enter 1, 2, 3, 4 for a menu, that would be a switch statement. That would be perfect for a switch statement. So if they press 1, what code do you do? If they press 2, what code do you do? If they press 3, what code do you do? And it shortens the amount of code that you have to write. So a switch statement, when you start getting large cases, for example, then it makes it a lot easier to write in a switch statement than it would in an if statement. So those are the main differences. So let's get on to those questions. Okay, so we have some code here which has one switch statement. What you need to do is pause the video and then see if you can answer the questions. So hopefully you've paused the video. Let's go through them. So we can see on line 7 and 8, we've asked the user for a integer, and we've inserted that integer into the value variable, and then we've put that value variable into our switch statement, and then we're comparing that value variable with 3 cases. So we're comparing it with 1, comparing it with 2, and comparing it with 4. And then we also have a default one that if it doesn't match up with any of them, it will print this. So the first question, why is there an error on case 2? Well, it is an integer. So that could be a problem if our variable is also, the variable that we inserted into it is not an integer, but the variable that we inserted into the value is an integer, so that is not a problem. So line 15 is actually okay. But if we go down to line 16 and 17, we see that we're missing something within our case statement. And what we're missing is our break keyword. So the reason why we have an error on line 15 is because we don't have that break keyword. And we must use that break keyword to break out of the switch statement. So it just stops the switch statement and allows us to break out of it. If I inputted 3 into the value or the value variable, what would be outputted? So let's have a look at this. So we've got our variable here. The case 1, we compare it with 1. So is 1 the value equal 1? No. Does it equal 2? No. Does it equal 4? No. So the default means if nothing else is matched up, we'll print out or execute this code. So number 2 would equal hello new user. Question 3, how would you rewrite line 19 if you were to take it out of this switch statement and create a new if statement? So if I wanted to change that to an if statement, I would say if value is equal to 4, then I would say system out.print d. So that's what I would do. So you can see the difference in the amount I would have to write if I wanted to change all of this into an if statement. I would have to say if value is equal to 1, do this, else if value is equal to 2, do this, else if value is equal to 4, do this, else do this. So there's a little bit more you would have to write in each of the conditions. And this is why the switch statement is so useful when you are comparing one value again and again and again. It just reduces the amount of code that you have to write, and it makes it easier to see the logic of the logic that you're asking that variable. And the last one, number 4, explain what the keyword default does. Again, this is just like an else statement. It asks originally to see if this value is equal to one of these values, and if it's not equal to one of these values, you're going to execute these default code. So that's the end of the video. If you are able to remember all of the key words for a switch statement, I think you have a good understanding of the material that you need for this section. If you can explain the reason why you need break in the switch statement, then I would say you're on track to pass that MTA exam. And then if you're able to explain a situation when you would use a switch statement over an if statement, leave it in the comments below and enter in a discussion with some of the other learners. If you found this useful, if you found the video useful, please like. And if you're interested in getting mock tests for the MTA exam, please subscribe and I'll notify you as I publish them. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.